That Friday night, as I held the watch I had chosen with such care in my hands, I never imagined that my son, Ethan, would take it, look at it with contempt, and say in front of 80 guests, "What a ridiculous gift. You're useless, Mom." I still feel the weight of those words as if they had just landed on my chest a few minutes ago. My name is Clara Miller. I'm 60 years old, and this is the story I kept hidden for too long because I was ashamed to admit that my own son, to whom I gave everything, treated me as if I was worth nothing. But today, I'm going to tell it all, because maybe someone needs to hear it. It all started 3 weeks before his 35th birthday. Ethan was living with me in the family house in Greenwich Village, that same house that his father and I bought with years of hard work. He had his own suite on the second floor, he used my car whenever he wanted, and I still cooked his favourite meals on Sundays. I thought we were close, that he needed me as much as I needed him. One April afternoon, while I was watering the hydrangeas in the yard, I heard his voice from the patio. He was talking on the phone with someone. "Yeah, dude, my mum is so basic. She doesn't understand anything about brands or style. I bet she's going to get me something totally outdated for my birthday." He laughed, a cold laugh I didn't recognize. But whatever, I gotta put up with it. I still live here and use her money. The water from the hose kept running while I stood paralyzed among the flowers. My hands were trembling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up 3 times to check on the Swiss watch I had set aside for him at Mr. Peterson's jewelry store. It was a classic Longines, elegant, with a steel case and a brown leather strap. I had saved 6 months of my pension to buy it. In the box, I also kept the old photograph of Ethan when he was 5 years old, hugging me in my mother's garden. He was wearing the first toy watch I gave him, and he used to say that when he grew up, he wanted a real watch, like his grandpa's. I remembered all of that, every detail, every childhood promise. But now I was afraid that this gift wouldn't be enough for him. The following days were strange. Ethan barely spoke to me. He came home late at night. He left his clothes lying around, and when I asked him how he was, he answered in single syllables, "Fine, Mum," or "Talk later, I'm busy." One morning, while I was making coffee, I found a printed invitation with gold lettering on the dining room table. It was for his birthday party. The address was an event hall in Midtown. 80 confirmed guests. He hadn't said anything to me. When he came down for breakfast, I asked him in a calm voice, "Son, are you having a party?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Yeah, my friends organized the whole thing. It's going to be awesome." "And am I going to be there?" He shrugged. "Duh, you're my mum." But he said it like it was an obligation, like I was a chore he had to complete. That afternoon, while I was wrapping the watch in navy blue paper with a silver bow, I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't just a gift. It was everything I could give him. My love, my effort, my memory of when he loved me so well. The night of the party, I put on my pearl grey dress, the one I had worn to my cousin's wedding. I fixed my hair, put on the silver earrings my mother inherited to me. I wanted to look nice. I wanted Ethan to be proud of me. I arrived at the venue at 8 o'clock at night. The lights were bright, the music was loud, and there were tables with white tablecloths and expensive flower arrangements. I recognized some of his friends, but none of them greeted me. Ethan was in the center, surrounded by people, a glass in his hand. He was wearing a black suit, a white shirt without a tie. He looked handsome, successful, and happy. When he saw me, he made a quick face and came toward me. "Mom, you made it. Sit over there, okay? With the aunts." He pointed to a table in the back near the kitchen. I didn't say anything. I just walked over and sat down, the gift in my hands. An hour passed. No one approached me. I drank sparkling water. I watched everyone laugh, dance, and clink glasses. Ethan didn't look over at my table once until it was time for the gifts. They set up a long table in front of everyone. People started bringing big boxes, international brand bags, and thick envelopes. I waited, took a deep breath, stood up, and walked toward him, my navy blue package in my hands. The music volume dropped. Everyone turned. Ethan looked at me with that expression I know well now: annoyance, embarrassment. I held out the gift with a smile. "Happy birthday, my love. I hope you like it." He took it without looking me in the eye. He unwrapped it slowly, as if he didn't want to. When he saw the watch case, he opened it, stared at the Longines for 3 eternal seconds, and then it happened. He looked up, stared straight at me, and said in a loud voice so everyone could hear, "Seriously, Mum? One of these watches? What a ridiculous gift." He laughed, loud and cruel, and then added, still smiling, "You're useless, Mum. Completely useless." The room fell silent. 80 people were looking at me. I felt the floor opening up beneath my feet. Sometimes we trust too much in those we shouldn't. Have you also been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read them. Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. Ethan wasn't always like this. There was a time, years ago, when my son was different. When his eyes would shine when he saw me coming home. When he would run toward me screaming, "Mom!" every time I returned from work. We were a team, he and I. His father, Robert, died when Ethan was only 12 years old. A sudden heart attack while he was playing tennis at the club. From one day to the next, we were alone. I was 37 years old and had a son who had just lost his hero. I remember those first few weeks as if they were yesterday. Ethan slept clutching his father's jacket. He didn't talk at school. He barely ate. One afternoon I found him in Robert's study, sitting in his swivel chair, trying to put on his dress shoes. "I want to be like him, Mum," he told me with tears in his eyes. "I want you to be proud of me." I hugged him so hard that I can still smell his freshly washed hair. From that day on, I worked double shifts. I took extra hours at the accounting firm where I worked. I sold some jewelry that Robert had given me. Also, Ethan could stay in his private school, so he wouldn't lack anything, so he wouldn't feel his father's absence in the form of scarcity. On the weekends, we cooked together. He helped me make the burgers or the macaroni and cheese. His hands would get stained with food, and he would laugh when I put flour on his nose. We prepared my grandmother's turkey stuffing, the kind that takes 3 days of work. "Someday I'm going to cook this for my wife," he would say while stirring the pot. "And I'll be there to teach her all your secrets," I would reply. He would smile, a clean, true smile. On Sunday afternoons, we would sit in the yard under the oak tree that Robert planted the year Ethan was born. I would read him stories when he was little, and when he grew up, we talked about everything: his dreams, his fears, the girls he liked at school. "Mum, you'll always be with me, right?" he asked me once. He was 14 years old. "Always, my love, until I can't anymore, and even after that." He rested his head on my shoulder. "I'll take care of you when you're old, too. I promise." I kept that promise in my heart like a treasure. When Ethan turned 18 and went to college, I was so proud that I cried throughout his high school graduation ceremony. He would study business administration at NYU, the same as his father. I bought him a new laptop, clothes, and books. Every month I deposited extra money so he could go out with his friends, so he wouldn't feel less than anyone else. Thanks, Mom. You're the best, he would tell me every time, and I felt complete. The first few years were good. Ethan came home on weekends. He brought his friends over. He filled the house with laughter and music. I would prepare food for everyone, and they would tell me, Mrs. Miller, you're a delicious cook. Ethan would hug me from behind while I was at the stove. Smells like home, Mum. Those words were worth more than anything. But something began to change when he turned 25. He got his first job at a consulting firm. He earned good money. He wore expensive suits. He went out with people on his level. He met Danielle, a girl from a wealthy family who was studying interior design. She came to the house a few times, but she looked at me strangely, as if my living room wasn't elegant enough, as if my paintings were outdated. Clara, have you never thought about remodeling? She asked me once while touching the living room curtains. This looks really old. Ethan didn't say anything. I just smiled. I like it this way. It has memories. Danielle made a face. Shortly after, Ethan started coming home less. His calls became shorter. When I asked him if he wanted to eat at home on Sunday, he would say, I can't, Mum. I have plans. What plans, son? With Danielle? With friends, you know. No, I didn't know. One day I dared to tell him, Ethan, I feel like we don't spend time together anymore. He was looking at his phone. Oh, Mum, don't exaggerate. I'm not a kid anymore. I swallowed. I know, but I'm your mother. That never changes. He sighed, as if I were a burden. After that conversation, I tried not to bother him as much, not to be intense, as he called it. But I missed my son. I missed our talks, our meals, our laughter. The house felt empty even when he was there. Danielle and Ethan broke up a year later. He didn't tell me why. He just came home one night with red eyes and locked himself in his room. I knocked on the door. Son, are you okay? Leave me alone, Mum. I prepared his favourite dinner, chicken pot pie. I left it outside his door with a glass of orange juice. The next morning, the plate was empty in the hallway. There was no thank you. There was nothing. But I was content knowing that at least he had eaten, because that's what mothers do. We settle for crumbs when we used to have feasts of love. Years passed. Ethan had more girlfriends, more jobs, more friends I never met. He became distant, cold, busy. I was still there, waiting, cooking, cleaning his clothes, paying the house utilities. He never asked permission to keep living with me after he turned 30. He just stayed. And I never asked him to leave, because a part of me still believed that one day my son would come back, that the child who hugged me in the garden, who promised to take care of me when I was old, was still in there. Until that night of his birthday, when he looked me in the eye in front of 80 people and called me useless, I still had hope. But the words I heard after his insult showed me the complete truth, and that truth hurt more than anything I had ever felt before. After Ethan called me useless in front of all those guests, I expected someone to say something, for someone to defend me, for someone to tell my son that he was wrong. But no one did. The 80 guests stayed silent for 3 seconds, which felt like 3 years. Then, as if nothing had happened, the music volume went up again and people resumed their conversations. I stood there, holding my purse with trembling hands, watching Ethan drop the watch case onto the gift table as if it were garbage. One of his friends, a tall guy with a beard and a designer shirt, approached him, laughing. Man, your mum really didn't get the memo. A long jeans? Seriously? Ethan laughed too. I know, buddy. I told her 1,000 times not to bother. But you know how mums are. They always think the gesture is enough. And what are you going to do with it? Ethan took the case without opening it properly and put it into a plastic bag under the table. I don't know. Maybe give it to the doorman or something. My heart broke into pieces. I walked toward the exit without saying goodbye. My legs could barely support me. I felt like everyone was watching me, that everyone knew I was that ridiculous, old-fashioned mother who didn't understand anything about her son's world. When I got to the parking lot, I got into my car and closed the door. And there, alone in the dark, I let out all the crying I had been holding back. I cried for my son, for the child he was, and for the man he had become. I cried for myself, for being so blind, for believing that love was enough. I cried for Robert, for not being there to see what his son had turned into. I don't know how long I stayed there. When I could finally breathe, I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. My mascara was running, my eyes were swollen, my hair was messy. I looked how I felt, broken. I drove back home in silence. The city streets were lit up. There were couples walking hand in hand, families leaving restaurants. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone but me. When I arrived, the house was dark and cold. I walked in the front door and left my shoes by the entrance. I walked up the stairs slowly. Every step weighed on me as if I were carrying stones on my shoulders. I sat down on my bed, still wearing the dress, and looked at the photograph I have on my dresser. It's of Ethan at 8 years old, on his first school dance day. He's wearing a white suit, his hands joined, and he's looking at me with a clean, sincere smile. "What happened to you, son?" I asked the photo. "When did you stop loving me?" The photograph didn't answer. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. I thought about everything I had done wrong, all the times I had perhaps overprotected him, or spoiled him too much, or hadn't taught him the value of things. But I also thought about all the times he had told me he loved me, all the promises he had made me, all the moments when I believed we were a team. Had it all been a lie? Ethan arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning. I heard him open the front door, heard him laughing with someone on the phone as he walked up the stairs, heard him close his bedroom door without even passing mine. He didn't come to apologize. He didn't come to explain anything. He just went to sleep as if nothing had happened. The next morning I was in the kitchen making coffee when he came down. He was wearing expensive pajamas, the kind that cost more than $200. He looked rested and calm. "Good morning, Mum," he said as he opened the refrigerator. I didn't answer. I just looked at him. He took out a carton of orange juice, poured himself a glass, and sat down at the kitchen counter with his phone in his hand. I walked closer slowly. My heart was beating so fast that I was sure he could hear it. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling, "we need to talk." He didn't even look up from his phone. "About what, Mum?" "About what happened last night." He shrugged. "What happened last night?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You humiliated me in front of all your guests. You called me useless." He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, indifferent. "Oh, Mum, don't exaggerate. It was a joke." "A joke doesn't feel like this, son." "Well, then you're too sensitive." I felt something break inside me. "Sensitive? Ethan, I gave you that watch with all my love. I saved 6 months to buy it for you." He took a sip of juice and sighed, as if I were an inconvenience. "And I appreciate the gesture, Mum, but it's not what I wanted." "And what did you want?" "Something better. Something truly elegant. My friends gave me amazing things. One guy gave me a Rolex, Mum. A Rolex." "I don't have the money for a Rolex, I know, and I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying that, well, it would have been better if you hadn't given me anything, if you couldn't give something decent." His words hit me like slaps. Something decent? I repeated. Ethan, that watch is beautiful. It's classic. It's quality. It's old, Mum. It looks like something Grandpa would wear. Your grandfather wore one just like it. Exactly, Grandpa stuff. He stood up from the counter and walked into the living room with the glass in his hand. I followed him. Son, I don't understand what happened to you. You weren't like this. He slumped onto the sofa and turned on the television. Mum, people change. I grew up. I have different tastes now. You can't expect me to still be the little kid who hugged his mum all the time. I don't expect that. I just expect respect. I do respect you, he said without looking at me. But you also need to understand that we're not the same anymore. I move in different circles. I have a different life. And sometimes your stuff, well, it just doesn't fit in. My stuff doesn't fit in? No, Mum. Your gifts, the way you dress, the way you talk, it's all very, I don't know, old-fashioned. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I embarrass you? He was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, with a voice so casual it chilled my blood, sometimes, yeah. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, looking at the man I no longer recognized. I understand, I finally said, and I went to my room. I locked the door and sat down on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking. My chest hurt, as if someone had stabbed me with a knife. As I tell all of this, I wonder where you are listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. For the next few weeks, I tried to be invisible. I got up early to prepare Ethan's breakfast, but I left it on the table and went out before he came down. I washed his clothes without saying anything. I cleaned the house in silence. I prepared dinner and stored it in labeled containers in the refrigerator. I was still his mother. I was still taking care of him, but I no longer expected anything in return. He didn't seem to notice the change either. He continued his routine. He left early. He came back late. He brought friends over sometimes. He used my car when his was in the shop. He asked to borrow money for emergencies he never explained, and I gave it to him. Always, because I was afraid of losing him completely. One afternoon, while I was folding his freshly washed clothes in his room, I found papers on his desk. They were credit card statements, all in my name. I picked them up with trembling hands and read the charges. Expensive restaurants, bars, designer clothes, trips, hotels. It all added up to more than $200,000 in the last 3 months. I hadn't made any of those purchases. I ran down the stairs. Ethan was in the living room watching a show on TV. What is this? I asked him, showing him the papers. He barely looked at them. Oh, yeah, I used your cards. Mine was blocked. You used my cards without asking me. Mum, we live in the same house. It's not that serious. It's $200,000, Ethan. And I'm going to pay you back. When? When I can. And in the meantime, he stood up from the sofa, irritated. You know what, Mum? I'm sick of your complaining. It's always the same with you. Everything bothers you. Everything hurts you. Why can't you be like other mums and support your son without always nagging? I froze. I have supported you your whole life. Oh, well, it doesn't seem to be enough, does it? Because you're still here, counting every dollar you spend on me. I'm not counting the money, Ethan. I'm counting your lack of respect. He took his jacket from the rack and walked toward the door. I'm leaving. I don't want to keep arguing with you. You're exhausting. And he left. I stood alone in the middle of the living room with those statements in my hands, watching the door close behind him. He didn't come home to sleep that night, or the next. I called him 20 times. I left voicemails. I wrote him texts asking if he was okay, if he needed anything, if he wanted me to come get him. He didn't answer any of them until 3 days later, at 11 o'clock at night, I received a message from him. "I'm fine. I'm at a friend's house. Don't worry." "Don't worry," he said, as if it were that easy, as if a mother could stop worrying about her son, even though that son had hurt her in every possible way. He returned a week later. He didn't knock. He used his key. He went straight up to his room without saying hello. I heard loud music until 3 o'clock in the morning. The next morning, he came down as if nothing had happened. He poured himself coffee. He took a donut from the fruit bowl. "Good morning, Mum." I was sitting at the dining room table with a cup of tea that had already gone cold. "Where were you?" I asked him. "I told you, with a friend." "Which friend? Do I have to report my whereabouts to you now?" "I'm your mother, Ethan. You live in my house." He slammed the coffee cup down on the counter. "Oh, right. Your house. It's always your house, isn't it? You always remind me." "I don't remind you to hurt you. I remind you because you seem to have forgotten." "I haven't forgotten, Mum. But I'm also not going to live asking permission for everything like I'm 15. I'm not asking you to ask permission. I'm asking for respect. I told you I respect you. Your actions say otherwise." Ethan looked at me with those cold eyes I no longer recognized, and then he said something I will never forget. "You know what your problem is, Mom. You never got over Dad's death, and now you want to keep me tied to you as if I could replace him. But I'm not him, and I'm not going to live my life trying to make you happy." I was speechless. He took his keys and left, and I stayed there, sitting in that kitchen full of memories, wondering when everything had broken, when my son had become a stranger, when I had stopped being his mum and had become a nuisance. But the answer would come soon, sooner than I thought, because there are things a mother can endure, and there are things that, even though they hurt, force you to wake up. After that conversation, something changed in me. It wasn't a big change. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was more like a quiet surrender. I stopped fighting. I stopped complaining. I stopped expecting Ethan to go back to being the son I knew. I simply became what he seemed to need, an invisible mother who was there when he needed her, but who didn't bother him when he didn't. The days became a mechanical routine. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, made coffee, left breakfast ready, cleaned the house, although Ethan didn't seem to notice, washed his clothes, ironed his shirts, and tidied his room when he went out. I did all that without expecting a thank you, because I had already learned it wouldn't come. One morning, while making his bed, I found a manila envelope under his pillow. It was open. The way it was placed, it was obvious he wasn't trying to hide it. I hesitated for a moment. I didn't like going through my son's things. I had never done it. But something in my gut told me I needed to see what was inside. I pulled out the papers with trembling hands. They were legal documents, contracts. And on the first page, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Application for property deed transfer. Property location, Greenwich Village, New York City. Current owner, Clara Miller. Transfer applicant, Ethan Miller. I read the document 3 times to make sure I was understanding correctly. My son was processing papers to take over my house. I kept reading. There were copies of my ID, my birth certificate, and the property title. Everything was taken from my personal file, from the drawer of my desk that I never locked because I never imagined I would need to. There was a handwritten note in the corner of the document, in Ethan's handwriting. Ask Attorney Smith if it's possible to expedite the process. Need liquidity, house value approx. $8 million. $8 million. My house was worth $8 million. and my son wanted to sell it. I sat down on the edge of his bed because my legs wouldn't hold me. The envelope fell from my hands and the papers scattered on the floor. I took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. I tried to find a logical explanation. I tried to think that maybe there was a valid reason why Ethan was doing this without consulting me. But there wasn't. My son wanted to steal my house, the house that his father and I bought with years of effort, the house where Ethan took his first steps, the house where we celebrated all our Christmases, the house where Robert died, the house that was the only thing I had left. I heard the front door open. Ethan had arrived. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. Quickly, I gathered the papers and put them back into the envelope. I placed it under the pillow exactly as I had found it. I wiped away the tears I didn't know I had shed and walked out of his room just as he reached the hallway. "Mom, what were you doing in my room?" "I was making your bed." He looked at me with suspicion. "Making my bed? I told you I don't need you to do that." "I know, but I like things tidy." He walked into his room and closed the door without saying anything else. I walked down the stairs slowly, holding on to the railing because I felt like I was going to faint. I got to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so much that I spilled half of it. What was I going to do? Should I confront him? Should I call a lawyer? Should I kick him out of the house? All those options spun through my mind like a whirlwind, but in the end, I didn't do anything because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my son completely. Afraid of being left alone. Afraid of admitting that the person I had loved most in the world was betraying me. So I swallowed that secret, just as I had swallowed so many others, and I continued to be his mother. The following days were torture. Every time Ethan came down for breakfast, I looked at him and thought, when are you going to tell me? When are you going to have the courage to tell me you want to take away my house? But he didn't say anything. He acted normal. He ate what I prepared. He used my car. He watched TV in my living room, as if everything was fine, as if he weren't stabbing me in the back. One night, 2 weeks after finding those documents, Ethan came home with a woman. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard the door open and laughter, a woman's laughter. I looked into the living room and saw a young girl, about 25 years old, blonde, wearing tight clothes and high heels. She was clinging to Ethan's arm as if she had known him forever. "Mom," Ethan said when he saw me, "I want you to meet Valerie. Valerie, this is Clara, my mom." The girl extended her hand to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller." "Likewise," I replied. Ethan took her straight to the living room. "Want some dinner, Val? My mum is a really good cook." "Oh no, babe. I already ate. Besides, I have to watch my diet." They sat down on the sofa. He turned on the television. She took off her shoes and put her feet on the coffee table. My feet had never been on that table. I returned to the kitchen and continued preparing dinner, even though I was no longer hungry. Every so often I heard their laughter, their quiet conversations, the sound of their kisses. I felt like a stranger in my own house. After a while, Ethan came into the kitchen. "Mom, Valerie is going to stay the night." I looked at him, surprised. "Stay the night? Here?" "Yeah, here. Got a problem with that?" 1,000 problems, I wanted to tell him, but I only said, "No, none." "Perfect. Then we'll head up to the room." And he left. I stood there with a spoon in my hand, watching my son walk up the stairs with this woman he had just met. That's one thing a mother shouldn't have to hear in the house where she raised her son. The next morning, Valerie came down first. She was wearing one of Ethan's shirts and nothing else. She walked to the kitchen barefoot, opened the refrigerator as if it were her own home, and took out a yogurt. "Morning," she said without looking at me. "Good morning." She sat down at the counter and ate her yogurt while looking at her phone. She didn't make conversation. She didn't ask anything. She was just there, taking up space. Ethan came down 20 minutes later, freshly showered, smelling of my expensive soap that I saved for special occasions. "Did you already eat breakfast, Val?" "Yeah, babe. Although your mum doesn't have almond milk. She only has regular milk." Ethan looked at me as if I had committed an unforgivable mistake. "Mom? Next time, buy almond milk, okay?" I nodded without saying anything. Valerie left after breakfast. Ethan walked her to the door. They said goodbye with a long kiss that I tried not to see. When he returned, I was collecting the plates. "Did you like Valerie?" he asked me. "I don't know her, but you like her, don't you?" "Yeah, she seems nice. She's amazing. She's a model. She works for international brands. She's super successful." "That's great. And she loves me. For real. Not like the others." I looked him in the eye. I wanted to ask him, "And do you love me? Do you still love me even though you're processing papers to take away my house?" But I didn't. I just smiled at him and continued washing the dishes. As I tell all of this, I wonder where you are listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. Valerie started coming over more often, 3 times a week, then 4. Then she stayed for entire weekends. She always treated me with that cold, distant courtesy. Never rude, but never warm. As if I were the housekeeper. One Saturday afternoon, they were both in the living room watching a movie. I walked past with a laundry basket full of clean clothes. "Mrs. Miller," Valerie called out to me, "can you bring me a glass of water with ice?" I stopped. I looked at her. She was smiling, waiting. "Sure," I said. I went to the kitchen. I prepared the glass of water with ice. I brought it to her. "Thanks," she said without looking at me. Ethan didn't even turn around. That night, while folding laundry in my room, I heard voices in Ethan's room. They were talking loudly, arguing. I walked closer to the door and listened. "I don't understand why you still live here, Ethan," Valerie was saying. "You're 35 years old. You should have your own place." "I know, but it's complicated." "What's complicated? Your mum keeps you like you're a kid." "She doesn't keep me. I pay for my things." "Oh, really? Do you pay rent? Do you pay utilities?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Valerie continued. "Look, babe, if we want to have a future together, you need to be independent. You need your own space. I can't keep coming to your mum's house." "I know, and I'm going to do it." "When?" "Soon. I'm already working on it." "Working on what?" Another silence. "On selling this house." My heart stopped beating. "Selling the house?" Valerie asked. "Is it your house?" "Technically it's Mum's, but my dad bought it, and I'm the only heir, so it's really mine." "Does your mum know you want to sell it?" "Not yet, but I don't think she'll care. She can just rent something smaller. She's old now. She doesn't need all this space." "And what are you going to do with the money?" "Buy an apartment in Chelsea, close to your work. Invest some. Start my business." "That sounds perfect, babe. It's about time you became independent." They kissed. I heard the sound, and I stayed there, on the other side of the door, my soul in pieces. My son was going to sell my house. He was going to leave me with nothing. And worst of all, he was doing it without guilt. As if I didn't matter. As if my years of sacrifice were worth nothing. I went back to my room in silence. I closed the door. I sat down on the bed. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry, because there was something stronger than sadness growing inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. That night, I took an old shoebox out of my closet. Inside, I kept important documents. I found the house title. It was in my name. Only my name. Robert and I had agreed on that from the beginning. He used to say, "If anything happens to me, I want everything to be in your name, so no one can ever take anything away from you." Now I understood why. I also found my bank statements. I had some savings, not much, but some, and I had my monthly widow's pension. I could survive if I had to. I put everything back in the box, and I hid it at the back of my closet, behind my winter coats. Then I lay down, and for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Because even though I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let my son steal from me. I wasn't going to let him treat me like garbage. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. The following days were strange. I continued my routine, but something inside had changed. I observed more. I listened more. I made a mental note of everything Ethan did or said. One afternoon, while cleaning his room, I checked the envelope with the documents again. There were new papers, quotes for apartments in Chelsea. All very expensive. None that he could afford on his salary. He needed the money from my house. I also found printed WhatsApp messages between him and Attorney Smith, the lawyer who was processing the transfer. "Attorney, has the house thing moved forward? I need you to expedite the process. My mum is old and sometimes gets confused. If she signs the papers soon, the better." My mum is old and sometimes gets confused. That was his strategy. To make me seem senile, incapable of making decisions, so that no one would question why I was signing papers that took everything away from me. I felt my blood boil, but I didn't say anything. I put everything back exactly as I found it. And I waited, because I had learned something during those months of pain and silence. Sometimes, the best strategy is to let the enemy think they have won until you take everything away from them in one fell swoop. And that blow was getting closer and closer. 3 weeks after finding those documents, something happened that changed everything. Ethan went on a business trip to Boston. He was going to be gone for 5 days. He told me on Monday morning while I was making coffee, "Mom, I'm going to Boston. I'll be back Friday." Business trip? Yeah, a conference. I already left my suitcases ready in my room. "Can you bring them down to the car?" He didn't ask me. He ordered me. "Sure," I replied. He left without saying goodbye, without a hug, without a "take care, Mom," or a call when he arrived. He just left. I was left alone in that house that suddenly felt too big and too silent. For the first few hours, I did my normal routine. I cleaned the kitchen, watered the plants in the garden, and put a load of laundry in the washing machine. But around noon, something in me shifted. I was standing in front of Ethan's closed bedroom door, a mop in my hand, and I thought, there has to be more. There has to be something I haven't seen. I opened the door slowly as if someone might hear me. I went in. His room was messy, as always. Clothes on the floor, the bed unmade, dirty glasses on the nightstand. But this time, I hadn't come to clean. I had come to find the truth. I started with his desk. I opened the drawers one by one. I found invoices, receipts from expensive restaurants, and concert tickets, all paid with my credit cards. In the second drawer, I found a black folder. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were more legal documents. But these were different. They were loan agreements. 5 different loans. all in my name. Personal loan, Chase Bank. Account holder, Clara Miller. Amount, $150,000. Personal loan, Bank of America. Account holder, Clara Miller. Amount, $200,000. I kept reading. The 5 loans totaled more than $800,000. $800,000, yes, that I had never requested. $800,000 that someone had taken out using my name, my signature, my identity. And that someone was my son. I checked the dates. The oldest was 6 months ago. The most recent, 2 weeks ago. They all had copies of my official ID. They all had documents with a signature that looked like mine, but which I knew wasn't mine. I felt my legs tremble. I sat down in his swivel chair, trying to breathe. How had he done this? How had he forged my signature? How had he taken out all these loans without me knowing? And then I understood. The banks had sent notifications, emails, and phone calls, but Ethan always got to the mail first. He checked the mailbox before I did. He answered the house phone when it rang. He had been intercepting all the information. He had been hiding my own financial life from me. I kept searching. At the bottom of the drawer, I found a brown envelope with more papers. I took them out. They were statements from a bank I didn't know, an investment account in the name of Ethan Miller Entrepreneur Fund. The numbers made me dizzy. There were transactions of hundreds of thousands of dollars, deposits, withdrawals, and transfers. On the last page, I saw a handwritten note. Initial investment, $600,000. CMV loans. Projected investment post-house sale, $8 million. Expected ROI, 30% annual. CMV, Clara Miller. Me. My son had used my name, my credit, and my identity to take out loans he was never going to pay back. And now he planned to sell my house to finance his entrepreneur business. I put everything back in the black folder exactly as I found it. I kept checking. In his closet, behind a row of expensive shoes I had never seen him wear, I found a Nike box. I opened it, expecting to find sneakers. But there were no sneakers. There was cash. Wads and wads of $100 bills organized with rubber bands. I counted quickly. There was at least $100,000 in cash. Where had all that money come from? I kept looking. Under his bed, I found a black backpack. I opened it. Inside was a laptop I had never seen. I took it out and turned it on. It didn't have a password. The screen lit up and the desktop appeared. It was full of files with names like UVF Project Investments, 2024 Investor Contacts. I opened one at random. It was a business plan. 50 pages describing an innovative financial technology startup that Ethan was supposedly developing. I read the executive summary. Ethan Miller. Capital is an investment firm specializing in emerging technology for the Latin American market, with an initial capital of $8 million. $8 million. The value of my house. I kept reading. The document was full of terms I didn't understand. Blockchain, fintech, venture capital, seed investment. But there was one section I understood perfectly. It was called Initial Capital Structure. Funding sources, sale of family real estate asset, $8 million. Bank loans under family account. Holder name, $800,000. Own capital, $50,000. Family real estate asset, my house. Family account holder, me. My son had planned all of this. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a mistake. It was a detailed, calculated, cold plan. And I was just a tool, a means to get money. I closed the laptop and put it back in the backpack, exactly as I had found it. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I walked out of his room and went down the stairs slowly, holding on to the railing. I reached the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. For hours, I stayed there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything I had discovered. My son was a thief, a con artist, a liar, and I had been his perfect victim. The trusting mother who never questioned anything, who always believed in him, who always defended him. I got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen. I took a pitcher of iced tea out of the refrigerator that I had prepared that morning. I poured myself a glass and drank it in one gulp. I needed to think clearly. I needed a plan. Because now that I knew the complete truth, I couldn't keep acting as if I knew nothing. But I couldn't confront him directly either. Not yet. Because if Ethan realized I had discovered everything, he could accelerate his plans. He could force me to sign papers. He could become dangerous. No. I needed to be smart, patient, and strategic. I went to my room and took out my phone. I searched on Google for how to protect property from fraud. I read for hours, legal articles, forums, government pages. I learned that I could put a notice of non-transfer in the public property registry. That would prevent anyone from selling my house without my explicit and verified consent. I learned that I could report the identity theft for the loans, that I could request that they be cancelled because I had never authorized them. I learned that I had rights, that I had options, that I was not defenseless. The next day, Tuesday morning, I dressed in my best clothes. A navy blue pantsuit I had bought for my sister's funeral 3 years ago. I put on makeup. I fixed my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was no longer the broken woman who cried in her room. I was Clara Miller, 60 years old. Widow, mother, and no one, not even my own son, was going to steal what was mine. I took my purse and left the house. My first stop was the bank, the Chase Bank where we had held our family account for 20 years. I asked the account executive to review all my financial products. Mrs. Miller, I see you have a checking account, a savings account, 2 credit cards, and… Oh yes, a personal loan you took out 4 months ago. A personal loan? Yes, for $150,000, don't you remember? No, I never took out that loan. The woman frowned. I have the application here with your signature, ma'am. Can you show it to me? She handed me a copy. There was my name, my address, my social security number, and a signature that looked like mine, but which was definitely not mine. I want to report this as fraud, I said in a firm voice. The executive became nervous. Ma'am, this is very serious. We would need to start an investigation. Do you have any idea who could have done this? I hesitated for a moment. Telling the truth meant admitting that my son was a criminal. It meant destroying our relationship forever. It meant that everyone would find out about my shame. But keeping quiet meant losing everything. Yes, I finally said. I know who it was. Who? My son. The woman's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly composed herself and took notes. I understand. This is more common than you think, ma'am. We need you to file a formal complaint. I'll give you the forms and guide you through the process. I spent 2 hours at that bank. I filled out forms, gave statements, and signed documents. When I left, I felt an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. My second stop was the Public Property Registry. There, I asked for advice on how to protect my house. A young lawyer helped me. I explained the situation without giving too many details. I just told him I wanted to make sure no one could sell my property without my explicit authorization. You can file a preventative notice, he explained. It's free, and prevents any transaction from happening without you being physically present with official identification. It takes a few days to process, but once filed, your property is protected. And what if someone has already started the sales process? Are there any transactions in process? I don't know. Can you check? The lawyer checked his computer. Let me see. No, Mrs. Miller. There are no pending transactions on your property. It's clean. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was still on time. I want to file that preventative notice today. Perfect. I'll need your ID, your property title, and you'll need to fill out these forms. I spent another hour there. When I finished, I held a receipt that read, Preventative notice filed. Filing date, date. Validity, indefinite until cancelled by the owner. My house was protected. No one could sell it without me being present, not even Ethan. I returned home late that afternoon. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had control over my life. That night, while preparing dinner just for myself, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? Mum, how are you? His voice sounded normal, casual, as if he cared. Fine, son. And you? Good. Good. The conference is interesting. Hey, have you gotten any calls from the bank? My blood ran cold. The bank? Which bank? I don't know. Any of them. I left a credit card payment pending and sometimes they call the house. He was lying. I knew because now I knew the truth. No, I haven't received any calls. Oh, perfect. If they call, don't answer, okay? Those bank people are really insistent. All right, son. Hey, Mum. Yes? Are you okay? You sound weird. For a second, I was tempted to tell him everything, to shout that I knew what he had done, that I knew he was stealing from me. But I held back. I'm fine, Ethan. Just tired. Okay. Well, I gotta go. I'll call you in a few days. Take care. He hung up without waiting for a reply. I was left holding the phone, staring at the black screen. And then, for the first time, I smiled. Because Ethan didn't know that I already knew. He didn't know that I had already protected my house. He didn't know that I had already reported his fraud. He didn't know that his perfect plan was falling apart. And when he returned from Boston, he was going to meet a very different mother. A mother who was no longer going to keep quiet. A mother who was no longer afraid. Because I had discovered something important during those hours of pain and searching. When you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. And Ethan was about to discover exactly how dangerous his mother could be. Ethan returned from Boston on Friday night. I was in the living room reading a book when I heard his key in the door. He walked in, dragging his suitcase, his hair messy, and dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired. Hi, Mom, he said without looking at me. Hi, son. How was the trip? Good. Productive. He left the suitcase at the foot of the stairs and went straight to the kitchen. I heard him open the refrigerator, pour water, and close the door. He returned to the living room with the glass in his hand. Did anything happen while I was gone? My heart beat faster, but my voice came out calm and controlled. No, everything normal. Are you sure? No one came from the bank? No weird letters arrived? No, Ethan. Why do you ask? He shrugged. No reason. Just curious. He took a sip of water and went to his room. I stayed there, with the book in my hands, feeling the adrenaline rush through my veins. He still didn't know anything. The next few days were strange. I continued my normal routine on the outside, but inside, I was a different person. Every morning, I woke up with a purpose. Every night, I went to bed knowing I was closer to the final truth. On Tuesday, I received a call from the bank. It was the executive who had helped me. Mrs. Miller, I'm calling to inform you that the bank accepted your fraud report. We are going to cancel the $150,000 loan. You will not have to pay anything. Additionally, we've initiated an internal investigation. And what happens to the person who committed the fraud? There was a pause. If you decide to file a criminal complaint, the bank will support it with all the necessary evidence. But that decision is yours, ma'am. I understand. Thank you. Shit. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Filing a criminal complaint against Ethan meant he could go to jail. It meant destroying his life. It meant admitting to the world that my son was a criminal. Could I do that? Could a mother do that? I didn't have an answer yet. On Wednesday, Valerie came to the house. She arrived at noon in an Uber, carrying shopping bags from expensive stores. Ethan wasn't there. He had gone to work. She rang the doorbell. I opened it. Hi, Mrs. Miller. Is Ethan here? No, he left. He didn't tell me what time he'd be back. Oh, what a pain. He told me I could come. Well, can I wait inside? I wanted to tell her no, that this was my house, and she had no right to come in whenever she wanted. But I held back. Come in. She walked in as if it were her own home. She left the bags in the living room. She took off her shoes. She threw herself onto the sofa. Can you bring me a water, ma'am? That word, can. It wasn't a question. It was an order disguised as courtesy. I went to the kitchen. I took a bottle of water from the refrigerator. I brought it to her. Thanks, she said without looking at me, her eyes glued to her phone. I sat down in the individual armchair across from her. I picked up my book. I pretended to read, but I was really watching her. Valerie was pretty, young, and self-assured. She wore designer clothes. Her bag was an authentic Louis Vuitton that cost more than I earned in 3 months of pension. Her nails were perfectly manicured. Her hair, freshly styled at the salon. She represented everything Ethan wanted to be. Successful, glamorous, part of a world I didn't understand. After a few minutes, she looked at me. Mrs. Miller, can I ask you something? Of course. Have you ever thought about moving to a smaller place? I mean, this house is huge for just one person. I felt my blood boil, but my voice came out calm. I'm not alone. I live with my son. Yes, but Ethan is grown up. Sooner or later he's going to leave, and you'll be left here alone in this huge house. Doesn't that scare you? No. This is my house. My husband and I bought it many years ago. It holds memories. It has history. Valerie made a face. Memories don't pay the electricity bill, ma'am, or the water, or the maintenance. A house like this must cost a lot of money to keep up. I manage. Well, I'm just saying it would be more practical to sell and buy something smaller, more modern, and with the money left over you could invest it, make your money grow. Now I understood. Valerie wasn't making casual conversation. She was testing the waters, trying to convince me that selling my house was a good idea. Ethan had sent her. Valerie, I said, looking her directly in the eyes, I know you and Ethan have plans. I know you want me to sell this house. She turned pale. What? No, Mum, I don't. Don't pretend. I overheard your conversation weeks ago. I know everything. She fell silent. For the first time since I met her, she didn't know what to say. And I want you to tell Ethan something for me, I continued. This house is not for sale. It will never be. And if he tries to sell it without my permission, he's going to have very serious problems. Valerie stood up from the sofa. She quickly grabbed her bags. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. I just came to see Ethan. Of course. And now you can leave. There's no need for you to wait for him. She walked out of the house without saying goodbye. I closed the door behind her and leaned against the wood. My hands were shaking, but I was also smiling, because I had just done something I had never done. I had defended myself. That night, Ethan came home furious. He stormed up the stairs and burst into my room without knocking. What did you say to Valerie? I was sitting on my bed, reading. Good evening, Ethan. What did you say to her? She's crying. She says you kicked her out of the house. I didn't kick her out. I told her she could leave if she wanted to. Why? Because she was uncomfortable with the conversation we were having. What conversation? I looked at him directly. About my plans to sell this house. Or rather, about your plans for me to sell this house. He froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Mum. Valerie is confused. Valerie. Ethan. Stop. My voice came out louder than I expected. He shut up. I got out of bed and walked toward him. I know you want to sell my house. I know you took out loans in my name. I know you have a business plan that uses my property as initial capital. I know everything. The expression on his face changed, from fury to surprise, then to fear, then to something darker. You went through my things. I live here, Ethan. It's my house. That doesn't give you the right to go into my room. And you don't have the right to steal from me. The word hung in the air like a knife. Steal. Ethan clenched his jaw. I'm not stealing from you. It's family money. It's my inheritance. Your inheritance will be when I die. As long as I'm alive, all of this is mine. Dad worked for this house too, and Dad left it to me, because he trusted that I would know what to do with it. And what are you going to do? Stay here until you die alone and forgotten? His words hurt, but they no longer broke me. Maybe. Or maybe I'll sell it someday. But it will be my decision, not yours. I'm your son, your only son. Everything you have should be mine. Everything I have, I gave to you for 35 years. I gave you food, a roof over your head, an education, and love. I gave you everything I could, and more. And do you know what I got in return? He fell silent. Contempt, humiliation, theft, lies. Don't exaggerate, Mum. Exaggerate? You called me useless in front of 80 people. You threw away my gift like it was garbage. You forged my signature to take out loans I never authorized. You planned to sell my house without telling me anything. What part of that is exaggeration? Ethan walked toward the door. He stopped before leaving. You know what your problem is, Mum. You never let me grow up. You always wanted to keep me here, controlled, dependent on you. Because if I left, you would be alone, and that terrified you. You're right, I said. I was terrified of being alone. That's why I endured everything you did to me. That's why I stayed quiet when you hurt me. Because I preferred to have you here, even if you treated me badly, than to lose you. He looked at me in surprise. But I'm not afraid anymore, Ethan, because I discovered something. I'm already alone. I've been alone for years. Because the son I loved, that child who hugged me in the garden and promised to take care of me, that child died a long time ago. And in his place there's a man I don't recognize. He stood in the doorway, not knowing what to say. I already reported the loans as fraud, I continued. The bank is going to cancel them, and I filed a preventative notice in the public property registry. No one can sell this house without me being present, not even you. His face turned red with anger. You did what? I protected what is mine. You're a selfish jerk. I need that money. For what? For your business that doesn't even exist? To impress Valerie? To keep living a life you can't afford? It's my future. And this is my life. We stood staring at each other. Two strangers. Two enemies. He was the first to break the silence. You know what? I'm leaving. I don't want to be in this house for 1 minute more. Perfect. The door is open. And I'm not coming back. Also perfect. I waited for him to leave. I waited for him to go to his room, pack, and walk out. But he didn't. He stayed there, standing, breathing heavily. And then he said something I didn't expect. Are you really going to let me go? His voice sounded different, smaller, more vulnerable. For a second, I saw the child he used to be, the child who was afraid of being alone, and a part of me wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him that everything was going to be okay, that I forgave him, that we could start over. But then I remembered everything, the insult on his birthday, the fraudulent loans, his cruel words, his plan to leave me with nothing, and I understood that I couldn't save him, that he had to save himself. Yes, I finally said. I'm going to let you go. Something changed in his gaze, a mixture of sadness, rage, and resignation. All right, he said. I'll come back tomorrow for my things. He walked out of my room and closed the door. I sat down on the edge of my bed and let the tears flow, because even though I knew I was doing the right thing, even though I knew I couldn't continue to be a victim of my own son, it hurt. It hurt to let go of the child I loved with all my heart. It hurt to accept that the man he became no longer loved me. It hurt to understand that sometimes a mother's love isn't enough to save a child from himself. I cried for hours, and when I had no tears left, I got up, washed my face, and looked in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen, my hair messy, my face tired. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw a woman who had decided not to be a victim ever again. The next morning, Ethan came downstairs with 3 large suitcases. I was in the kitchen making coffee. We didn't talk. He loaded the suitcases into his car. He made 3 trips. He didn't look at me once. When he finished, he came in one last time. He stood at the entrance to the kitchen. Mom. I looked at him, waiting. I'm going to get that money another way. I'm going to build my business. And when I'm successful, you're going to regret not supporting me. It wasn't an apology. It was a threat. I hope you succeed, Ethan, I said sincerely. I really do, but not at the cost of destroying me. He didn't reply. He took my car keys from the table. The keys, I said, holding out my hand. What? That car is mine. The keys, please. He thought about it for a moment. Then he slammed them down on the table. He also took the credit cards in my name out of his wallet. Take them. I don't need them anymore. He left them next to the keys, and he walked out. I heard his car engine start. I heard the automatic gate open. I heard him drive away down the street. And then, silence. A deep, complete, absolute silence. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by that silence, feeling my life change forever. My son was gone. And though it hurt, though I felt a part of me had broken, I also felt something else. Relief. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And you? What would you have done in my place? The first few days after Ethan left were the strangest of my life. The house was silent, a silence I had never experienced. There was no loud music at 3 o'clock in the morning, no doors slamming, no voices arguing on the phone, no clothes lying in the hallway. Just silence and me. The first few mornings, I woke up at 6 o'clock out of habit. I made coffee for two. And then I remembered I was alone, that I no longer had to make breakfast for anyone, that I no longer had to wash anyone's clothes, that I no longer had to walk in silence so as not to wake anyone up. I was free. But freedom felt strange, empty, and heavy. On Saturday, a week after Ethan left, I was watering the hydrangeas in the yard when the doorbell rang. I dried my hands on my apron and went to open it. It was Valerie. She was wearing dark sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. Her face looked worn, as if she hadn't slept in days. "Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice trembling. "Can I come in?" I hesitated for a moment. "What do you need, Valerie?" "To talk to you. Please, just 5 minutes." Something in her voice made me open the door. We went into the living room. She sat on the edge of the sofa, nervous, twisting her hands. I sat across from her and waited. "I don't know where to start," she finally said. "The beginning always works." She took a deep breath. "Ethan and I broke up." It didn't surprise me. "When?" "3 days ago. I I didn't know anything, Mom. I didn't know he was stealing from you. I didn't know about the loans. I didn't know he wanted to sell your house without your permission." "You really didn't know?" She looked me in the eye for the first time. "I swear I didn't. I thought this house was his too, that it was his dad's inheritance. He told me you agreed to sell it, that it was a decision you both made. He lied. I know. And when I found out the truth, I realized who he really was." She took a tissue out of her purse and wiped her eyes beneath her sunglasses. "After you confronted me that day, I went to look for him. I asked him what was going on. And he told me you were old, that you were confused, that you didn't understand how modern business worked. Sure. But something didn't add up. So I investigated. I spoke to friends who work at banks. I asked them to verify a few things, and I discovered that Ethan has debts everywhere. Credit cards maxed out, personal loans he hasn't paid, money he owes at restaurants, bars, and clubs. How much? More than $1 million, I gasped. A million? Yes. And all that money he was supposedly investing in his business? That business doesn't exist, Mrs. Miller. There are only debts, expensive vacations, designer clothes, and parties. He was living a life he couldn't afford, and when he ran out of credit, he decided to use yours, and then your house. I leaned back on the sofa, trying to process the information. My son wasn't just a thief. He was a compulsive liar, a con artist, a man who lived on appearances while sinking into debt. "Why are you telling me this, Valerie?" She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, swollen. "Because when I confronted him, when I told him that what he was doing to you was wrong, he said something horrible to me." "What did he say?" "He said, 'My mom is old. How many years does she have left? 10? Maybe less. Why does she need that big house? It's better if I use it now that I'm young, that I have plans, that I have a future. She's already lived her life.'" I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. "When I heard that," Valerie continued, "I realized I didn't know him, that the man I had fallen in love with didn't exist. It was just a mask, and underneath was someone cold, calculating, capable of destroying his own mother for money." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Miller. I'm sorry I treated you badly. I'm sorry I was a part of this without knowing it. I'm sorry I believed him. I looked at her for a long moment. I could have hated her. I could have screamed at her to leave my house and never come back. But I didn't, because I saw in her what I had been for years. Someone who loved Ethan and was betrayed by that love. I believe you, I finally said. You do? Yes, because I also fell for his lies for 35 years. You're not the only one. Valerie stood up from the sofa. I came to tell you something else. Ethan contacted me yesterday. He asked to borrow money, $50,000. He said it was urgent, that he had a business opportunity he couldn't pass up. And did you give it to him? No. I told him I didn't have that amount, but I'm sure he's going to keep looking for people to lend him money. He's going to keep running his scam. I know. Are you going to report him? It was the question I had asked myself 1,000 times in the last few days. I don't know yet. Valerie walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around. Mrs. Miller, you deserve better than this. You deserve peace. You deserve to rest. Don't let him take that away from you. And she left. I stayed sitting in the living room for hours, thinking about her words. She's already lived her life. That's what Ethan had said. As if my life were over. As if I no longer had a right to my own things. As if because I was older, because I was his mother, I should sacrifice myself so he could have whatever he wanted. But I was 60 years old, not 80, not 90, 60. I could live 20 more years, 30 if I was lucky. And were those years worthless? Did they not deserve to be lived with dignity, with my own resources, in my own house? For the first time, I felt rage, not sadness, not pain, pure rage. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned until 3 o'clock in the morning. I finally got up. I put on a robe and went down to the kitchen. I made chamomile tea. I sat down at the dining room table, my hot cup in my hands, and then I saw my phone on the table. I picked it up. I searched for my sister Patricia's number. Patricia lived in Dallas. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. We had drifted apart after a silly argument about my mother's inheritance. But at that moment, I needed to talk to someone in my family, someone who knew me from before I was just Ethan's mum. I dialed. She answered on the third ring in a sleepy voice. Hello? Patricia, it's Clara. Silence. Clara, what happened? Are you okay? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Yes, no, I don't know. What's wrong? You scared me. And then, without planning it, without thinking, I let everything out. I told her about Ethan's birthday, about the fraudulent loans, about the plan to sell my house, about Valerie, about everything. I talked for half an hour without stopping. Patricia didn't interrupt me once. She just listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then I heard her voice, firm and clear. Clara, you need to report him to Patty. He's my son. He's a criminal. Patricia. No. Listen to me. I know you love him. I know he's your weakness. And if you don't stop him now, he's going to keep doing it. He's going to find other people to steal from. Other mothers. Other Valeries. But if I report him, he could go to jail. And that would be his fault, not yours. You didn't hold a gun to his head and make him forge your signature. You didn't force him to take out loans in your name. He made those decisions. He has to face the consequences. My eyes filled with tears. I'm scared, Patty. I know, sis, but you have to be strong for you, for your future, for all the women who have been betrayed by their own children and have stayed quiet out of fear. I took a deep breath. What if I regret it? What if you don't, and he comes back in 6 months to try again? What if next time he manages to steal your house? What if you end up on the street? She was right. Think about it, Patricia continued. Get some sleep. And tomorrow, if you decide to report him, I'll fly over. You're not going to be alone in this, I promise. Thank you, Patty. I love you, sis. I've always loved you, even though we haven't talked. I love you too. We hung up. I finished the cold tea and went up to my room. This time, I could sleep. The next day, Monday, I woke up early. I put on my navy blue suit. I put on makeup. I fixed my hair. I looked in the mirror. I was no longer the broken woman who cried in her room. I was Clara Miller. And I had a decision to make. I took my purse and left the house. My destination was the district attorney's office. The trip took me 40 minutes by Uber. All the way there, my heart beat fast. My mind screamed at me to turn back. Don't do it. He's your son. But I also remembered his words. She's already lived her life. I remembered him calling me useless. I remembered him planning to leave me on the street. And I kept going. I arrived at the office. It was a grey, cold building, full of sad people waiting for their turn. I stood in line. When it was my turn, a middle-aged woman with glasses helped me. How can I help you, Mum? I took a deep breath. I've come to file a complaint for fraud and document forgery. Do you know who committed the crime? Another deep breath. Yes, my son. The woman looked up, surprised, but quickly recovered and took notes. I understand. Can you give me the details? For 2 hours, I told her everything. I showed her the bank documents, the copies of the loans, the statements, everything. She wrote down every detail patiently. This is enough to open an investigation file, she finally said. The district attorney's office will summon your son to give a statement. If the fraud is proven, he could face 3 to 9 years in prison. The words hit me like stones. 3 to 9 years. My son, in prison. Do you wish to proceed with the complaint? The woman asked. My hand trembled on the table. I thought about everything. The child he was, the man he became, his childhood laughter, his adult insults, the watch I gave him with love, the loans he took out in my name, the promises he made me, the betrayal he planned. And then I thought about me, my 60 years, my years left to live, my house, my dignity, my right to exist without being destroyed. Yes, I finally said. I want to proceed. The woman handed me the papers. I signed them one by one with a trembling but firm hand. When I left the office, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun was shining. The city was moving at its normal pace. People were walking on the streets, unaware that I had just done the hardest thing in my life. I had just reported my own son. I sat down on a park bench across from the office, and I cried. I cried for everything I had lost. I cried for everything I would never recover. I cried for the child I loved who no longer existed, but I also cried with relief, because I had finally stopped being a victim. I had finally defended myself. I had finally said, "No, this is not okay, and I will not allow it." My phone rang. It was Patricia. "Did you do it?" "Yes." "How do you feel?" "I don't know. Broken, but also liberated." "That's normal. You did the right thing, Clara. The hard thing, but the right thing." "You think so?" "I'm sure of it." We stayed silent for a moment. I'll arrive tomorrow afternoon, Patricia said. I'm going to stay with you for a few days. I don't want you to be alone. Thank you, Patty. That's what sisters are for. That night, back in my house, I walked through all the rooms. I went into Ethan's room. It was empty except for some furniture. It no longer smelled like his cologne. There were no clothes lying around. There was no trace of him. I sat down on his empty bed, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel pain being there. I felt peace, a strange, melancholy but real peace, because even though I had lost my son, even though our relationship would probably never be repaired, even though I would face difficult months of legal and emotional processing, I had gained something more important. I had gained myself back. I had recovered my voice, my dignity, my life. And no one, not even my own son, was ever going to take it away from me again. Patricia arrived the next day on a midday flight. I went to pick her up at the airport. When I saw her walk out of the arrivals area with her small suitcase, I realized how much I had missed her. We hugged for a long time. She smelled of the same floral perfume she had worn since we were girls. Her hug was strong, protective, like an older sister, even though I was 2 years older than her. I'm here, she whispered in my ear, and with just those 2 words, I felt less alone. On the way back home, Patricia didn't ask much. She just put her hand on mine while I drove and let me be. When we arrived, I showed her the house. She hadn't been here in years, not since Robert's funeral, to be exact. It looks the same, she said, looking at the living room. I can still see Robert sitting on that armchair reading the newspaper. Me too. And I can see Ethan as a child running up those stairs. Her voice broke a little when she said his name. I'm so sorry, Clara. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Me too. I prepared the guest room for her. That night, we ate dinner together in the kitchen. I prepared barbecued ribs, Patricia's favorite dish since we were kids. While we ate, she told me about her life, about her husband, about her 3 grown children, about her job as a primary school teacher, about how quiet Dallas was compared to New York City. She didn't mention Ethan. She didn't mention the complaint. She just talked about normal, everyday, comforting things. And I needed that. I needed to remember that life went on, that there was more than just the pain. On the 3rd day, Patricia was with me. A summons arrived from the district attorney's office. An officer handed it to me. The envelope was white, official, with seals and signatures. I opened it with trembling hands. Summons. Subject: Investigation File. 2.574, 2024. Mrs. Clara Miller is summoned to appear on Friday, October 18th at 10 o'clock in the morning to ratify her complaint and provide an additional statement. Patricia read the document over my shoulder. Do you want me to go with you? Can you? That's what I came for. Friday came sooner than I expected. Patricia and I dressed formally. Me in my navy blue suit, her in a grey dress and a black blazer. We looked like lawyers, or maybe we looked like 2 women trying to appear stronger than they felt. We arrived at the office at 9:30 in the morning. They called us in exactly at 10 o'clock. The assistant district attorney was a man in his 40s, with glasses and a tie. He looked tired but professional. Mrs. Miller, good morning. I'm Agent Smith. I'll be handling your case. Good morning. This is my sister, Patricia, I said, pointing to her. Can she stay with me? Of course. We sat down in front of his desk. All right, ma'am. I've reviewed your complaint and the documents you provided. I have to tell you that you have a solid case. The forged signatures are evident. The banks have already confirmed that you did not request those loans, and the attempted property transfer without your consent is documented. What happens next? We're going to summon your son to give a statement. If he accepts the charges, there may be a plea agreement. If not, the case goes to trial. Does a plea agreement mean he won't go to prison? It depends. In cases of fraud between family members, especially when the accused is the victim's son, judges tend to be more lenient, but he would have to pay back all the money, pay a fine, and possibly complete community service or serve probation. And if it goes to trial? If his guilt is proven, and with the evidence we have, it's almost certain, he could face 3 to 9 years if in effective prison time. The words hung in the air like knives. How long do I have to decide if I want to keep going? I asked. The agent looked at me, surprised. Ma'am, you've already filed the complaint. The process has begun. The only way to stop it is by withdrawing the complaint, and you can only do that before your son is formally indicted. Once we summon him and he gives a statement, the process continues, even if you want to withdraw. I felt the air leave my lungs. When will he be summoned? This week. Probably in the next 3 days. 3 days. I only had 3 days to decide if I really wanted my son to face the consequences of what he had done. We left the office in silence. Patricia drove us back because I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much. When we got home, I collapsed onto the sofa. I can't do this to him, I said, my voice broken. I can't send him to jail. Patricia sat down next to me. Clara, look at me. I looked up. What did Ethan do when he stole from you? Did he think about you? Did he worry about what would happen to you? No. And when he planned to sell your house and leave you with nothing, did he think about where you were going to live? No. And when he called you useless in front of 80 people, did he care how you felt? No. Then why do you have to protect him now? Because I'm his mother. Exactly. You are his mother. You are not his accomplice. You are not his enabler. You are his mother. And sometimes, being a mother means letting our children face the consequences of their actions, even if it hurts, even if it breaks us, because that's the only way they can learn. What if he doesn't learn? What if he just hates me more? Then that will be his decision. But at least you will know that you did the right thing, that you didn't allow him to continue destroying you, that you didn't allow him to continue destroying himself. I stayed quiet for a long time. Patricia was right, but the heart doesn't understand reason. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned until 4 o'clock in the morning. I finally got up, put on a robe, and went down to the kitchen. I took a pitcher of water from the refrigerator. I poured myself a glass. And then I saw the envelope with the summons on the dining room table. I picked it up. I read it again. And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I prayed. I wasn't a very religious person. Robert and I went to church on Christmas and Easter, but that was it. But that night, I needed something bigger than myself, something to tell me what to do. I closed my eyes and spoke in a low voice. God, if you're there, if you hear me, I need help. I need to know if what I'm doing is right. I need a sign, because I'm lost, and I'm afraid, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to live with this decision. I waited. The silence of the house answered me. But then, in that silence, I heard something. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't anything mystical or miraculous. It was a memory. Robert's voice. We were in this very dining room 12 years ago, when Ethan had failed his semester in college. I wanted to talk to his professors, fix things, find a solution. And Robert told me, Clara, my love, you have to let him fall. You have to let him crash. Because if you always catch him before he hits the ground, He's never going to learn to stand up on his own. But he's our son, I replied then. Precisely because of that. Because we love him. We have to let him learn. I opened my eyes. Robert was always wiser than me. He knew that protecting Ethan from everything wasn't love. It was weakness, disguised as love. And I had spent 35 years confusing the two. I went back to my room. This time, I could sleep. The next day, Saturday, my phone rang at 11 o'clock in the morning. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Mom? It was Ethan. My heart stopped. Ethan? Yeah, it's me. I'm calling from a friend's phone. Mine ran out of credit. Of course. Without money, he couldn't even pay for his phone anymore. What do you need? There was a long pause. I need to talk to you. We're talking. No, in person. Can I come over to the house? I hesitated. Patricia was looking at me from the living room, making gestures of, no, don't let him come. But something in his voice sounded different, less arrogant, more vulnerable. Why do you want to come? To apologize. The words took me by surprise. Apologize? Yeah. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. And I want to ask for your forgiveness. And also, I need to tell you something important. What is it? I can't tell you over the phone. Please, Mum, give me a chance. Patricia was shaking her head vigorously, but I thought, if I don't let him come, I'll always wonder what he wanted to tell me. I'll always wonder if I missed the last chance to fix things. All right, I finally said. You can come over, but my sister Patricia is here, and she's going to be present for the conversation. That sounds fine. I'm on my way. Thanks, Mum. He hung up. Patricia looked at me with concern. Clara, are you sure about this? No, but I need to hear him out. What if he comes to manipulate you? What if he comes to convince you to withdraw the complaint? Then it won't work, because I've already made my decision. What decision? I looked her in the eye. I'm going to follow through. I'm going to let the legal process continue. Because you're right. Because Robert was right. Because the only way Ethan will learn is by facing the consequences. Patricia hugged me. I'm proud of you, sis. Ethan arrived an hour later. He rang the doorbell. I opened the door. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. His hair was messy. He no longer looked like the arrogant, successful man he had been. He looked broken. Hi, Mum. Hi, Ethan. Come in. He walked in slowly, head down. Patricia was in the living room, standing, arms crossed. Her presence was a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. Aunt Patricia, Ethan said in a low voice. Ethan. We sat down, Ethan in an individual armchair, Patricia and I on the sofa, together. There was an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. Mum, I came to tell you I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything I did to you. I'm sorry I stole from you. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I treated you like garbage. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry I called you useless that day. I'm sorry I threw away your gift. I'm sorry I planned to sell your house. I'm sorry for everything. I waited. I didn't say anything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he continued. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I realized it, that I finally understood. What did you understand? I asked in a calm voice. That I destroyed you, that I took everything you gave me and used it against you, that I was the worst son in the world. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Valerie was right. You were right. Everyone was right but me. I was blinded by ambition, by appearances, by wanting to be someone I'm not. And now? Now I have nothing. I lost my job. I lost Valerie. I lost my apartment because I couldn't pay the rent. I lost everything. And I realized that the only thing that really had value was what was always there. You. I bit my lip to keep from crying. But I lost you. I lost you. And I understand. I understand if you never forgive me. I understand if you want me to leave and never come back. I understand everything. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry, and that I love you. I always loved you, even if I didn't show it, even if I made you feel the opposite. I love you, Mum. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him that everything was fine, that I forgave him, that we could start over. But then I remembered Robert's words. You have to let him fall. And Patricia's words. You have to let him face the consequences. I took a deep breath. Ethan, I finally said, I love you too. I will always love you. Because you are my son. That will never change. I saw hope in his eyes. But, I continued, love doesn't mean allowing you to destroy me. Love doesn't mean being an accomplice to your mistakes. Love doesn't mean sacrificing myself so you can be comfortable. The hope in his eyes began to fade. I filed a complaint against you, I said firmly, for fraud, forgery of documents, and attempted dispossession. The district attorney's office will summon you in the next few days. You have to face the consequences of what you did. But I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'm telling you I was wrong. I know and I believe you. But forgiveness doesn't erase actions. It doesn't erase the fraud. It doesn't erase the loans you took out in my name. It doesn't erase the damage you caused. Mum, please, if you reported me, I could go to jail. I know. And you don't care? Yes, I care. It breaks my heart. But I care more about teaching you that actions have consequences, that you can't destroy people and get away with it just because you're my son. Ethan got up from the armchair. He walked toward me. He knelt down in front of me. Mum, please, I beg you, withdraw the complaint. I'll pay you back everything. I swear. I'll get a job. I'll change. But please, don't let them put me in jail. He put his head in my lap, like when he was a child, and my heart broke into 1,000 pieces. Because I wanted to protect him. I wanted to save him. I wanted to say yes, that I would withdraw everything, that I would give him another chance. But then, I felt Patricia's hand on my shoulder, and I remembered why I was doing this. Not for revenge, not for hate, for love. Because loving him meant letting him learn. Loving him meant not being his eternal safety net. Loving him meant allowing him to crash so he could learn to stand up. I put my hand on his head. I stroked his hair, like when he was little. Ethan, I said in a soft but firm voice, I'm not going to withdraw the complaint. He lifted his head. His eyes were red, desperate. But I will be there when you get out, I continued. I will visit you if you go to jail. I will write you letters. I will pray for you. And when you serve your sentence, if you have truly changed, if you have learned, I will help you rebuild your life. Why? He asked, his voice breaking. Because I am your mother, and mothers don't abandon their children, but they also will not allow them to destroy them. Ethan stood up slowly. We looked at each other for a long moment, and in that moment, something changed between us. He was no longer the abusive son, and I was no longer the submissive mother. We were two broken people trying to find a way to heal. "I understand," he finally said. "You really do?" "Yes. I think I think it's what I need. I think if I get out of this, I'll never learn. I'll never change." I nodded. "I love you, Mum. I love you too, son." He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For loving me enough to let me fall." And he left. When the door closed, I collapsed onto the sofa. Patricia hugged me while I cried. I cried for my son. I cried for me. I cried for everything we had lost and everything we might someday recover. But I also felt something else. Peace. A deep, real, deserved peace. Because I had finally done the right thing, the difficult thing, the painful thing, but the right thing. And even though the road ahead was going to be hard, even though the next few months were going to be an emotional hell, I knew I had made the right decision. Not just for me, also for him. Because sometimes the greatest love a mother can give is to say, "No, this is not okay, and I'm going to let you learn even if it breaks me." 3 months after that last conversation with Ethan, I received a call from Agent Smith. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garden pruning the hydrangeas when my phone rang. "Mrs. Miller, I'm calling to inform you that your son has accepted a plea agreement." My heart skipped a beat. What does that mean? It means he has admitted the charges and accepted the conditions the judge imposed. He will not go to prison, but he will have to fulfill certain obligations. I breathed a sigh of relief and terror at the same time. What obligations? First, he has to pay you back all the money he fraudulently obtained. That's $800,000. The judge gave him a period of 2 years to pay, in monthly installments of $33,000. I did the mental math. That was almost Ethan's entire salary from a normal job. Second, the agent continued, he has to perform 500 hours of community service at a senior living facility. The judge deemed it appropriate for him to learn to value older people. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. There was poetic justice in that. Third, he will have a criminal record. He cannot leave the country without judicial authorization, and if he commits a similar crime again in the next 5 years, a sentence of 6 years in prison is automatically activated. I understand. Do you agree with this outcome, Mom? I thought about it for a few seconds. Did I agree? Was it enough? No, it wasn't enough to repair all the damage, but it was fair. Yes, I finally said. I agree. Perfect. We will send you the official documents by mail, and your son has to start paying you next month. I hung up the phone and sat on the garden bench for a long time. Ethan would not go to jail, but he hadn't gotten away with it either. He would have to pay. He would have to work. He would have to face the consequences of his actions for the next few years. And that was what I had wanted all along. Not to destroy him, but to teach him. Patricia had returned to Dallas 2 weeks after Ethan's visit, but we talked on the phone every other day. When I told her about the agreement, she sighed with relief. Thank God he's not going to jail, but I'm glad he has to pay. Me too. How do you feel? Strange, relieved, sad, all at the same time. That's normal. You've been through a lot. Yes. Have you heard anything from him? Where is he living? No, I haven't heard from him since that day. And would you like to know? The question took me by surprise. Did I want to know about Ethan? Yes and no. A part of me wanted to make sure he was okay, that he had a place to sleep, that he was eating, but another part of me knew that I needed space, that he needed space, that we both needed time to heal. I think it's better this way, I finally said. He knows where to find me when he's ready. 2 more months passed. Life started to feel different, lighter, and more mine. Without Ethan's presence, the house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a home again. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I went back to painting classes on Tuesday afternoons. I joined a book club at the neighborhood library. I invited friends over, friends I had neglected for years because Ethan always needed something. One afternoon, while having coffee with Gloria, a friend from college, she said something to me that struck me. Clara, you look different. Different how? I don't know. More alive, as if you've woken up after a long time asleep. I smiled. I think I did wake up. What happened? Did you meet someone? I laughed. No, quite the opposite. I found myself. Gloria seemed to understand perfectly. Sometimes we lose so much of ourselves taking care of others that we forget who we were. I'm glad you found yourself again. That night, in the solitude of my house, I thought about her words. I had spent 35 years being Ethan's mum. My entire identity was tied to him, to his well-being, to his needs, to his dreams. But what about me? What about Clara? For the first time in decades, I could ask that question without feeling guilty. One Saturday morning, 2 weeks later, I was in the kitchen making banana bread when the doorbell rang. I opened the door without thinking. It was Ethan, but not the Ethan I had seen 5 months ago. This Ethan was different. He had lost more weight, but he looked healthy. He was wearing simple jeans and a cotton shirt. Not designer clothes, not expensive watches, just normal clothes. His hair was shorter, combed back, and in his eyes, there was something I hadn't seen in years: humility. Hi, Mum. Ethan, I didn't know you were coming. I'm sorry. I should have called, but I wasn't sure if you would answer. He was right. Come in, I said, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, looking around the house as if it were the first time, as if he were seeing memories in every corner. Smells good, he said. Is that banana bread? Yes, like the one you used to make when I was a kid. The same one. We sat down in the living room. There was an uncomfortable distance between us, like two strangers trying to remember how to talk to each other. I came to bring you this, he said, taking an envelope out of his backpack. It's the first payment. I took it. Inside were $33,000 in cash. You didn't have to bring it in person. You could have deposited it. I know, but I wanted to see you. I wanted to tell you how I'm doing. I nodded. I got a job, he said, with something that sounded like pride. At a hardware store. It's nothing glamorous. I help customers, arrange boxes, make deliveries, but it's honest and it pays enough to live. I'm glad. I'm living in a rented room in Brooklyn. It's small. I share a bathroom with 3 other tenants, but it's mine. I pay for it with my own money. Good. And I already started the community service. I go to the St. Joseph Senior Living Facility 3 times a week. At first, I hated the idea, but his voice broke a little. But I realized something. Those old people at the facility. Many of them are there because their children abandoned them, because their families decided they were a burden. And I almost did the same thing to you, Mum. Tears began to stream down his cheeks. There's a lady named Mrs. Rodriguez. She's 82 years old. She never gets visitors. Her 3 children live in the city, but they don't go to see her, and she sits by the window every day, waiting for them to arrive. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. When I see her, I think of you. I think about how I treated you. I think about how I could have done the same thing to you. Leave you alone, forgotten, waiting. Ethan. No. Let me finish. I need to tell you this. I was a monster, Mum. A selfish monster. Cruel. Capable of destroying the person who loved me most in the world. And I have no excuse. I can't blame anyone else. It was my decision, my actions, my responsibility. He took a deep breath. But I want you to know that I am changing. For real. Not because of the agreement, for me. Because I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't like what I saw. And I decided to be different. There was a long silence. I know you don't expect me to believe you, he continued. I know words mean nothing after everything I did, but I'm going to prove it to you, month after month, year after year, until someday, maybe, you can truly forgive me. I looked him in the eyes, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years, sincerity. Ethan, I finally said, I believe you, and I forgive you. His eyes widened in surprise. You really do? Yes, I had already forgiven you months ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was before. It means I choose to let go of the resentment, that I choose not to carry your guilt, that I choose to move on with my life. I understand. And I'm glad you're changing. I'm glad you're working. I'm glad you're learning. But you're doing it for you, not for me, because I'm already fine. I said it firmly. And it was true. I was fine. For the first time in years, I was truly fine. I know, Ethan said. And I'm glad. You look different, stronger, happier. I am. He stood up from the sofa. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I just wanted to bring you the payment. And see you. Thanks for coming. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. Mum? Yes. Do you think someday we could, I don't know, have coffee together, talk, be family again? I thought about it for a few seconds. Maybe, someday, when we are both ready. That sounds fair. Ethan. Yes. I'm proud of you. For working. For paying. For trying to change. Something on his face lit up. Thanks, Mum. That means everything to me. And he left. I stood at the door, watching him walk down the street until he disappeared around the corner. He no longer had a car. He was walking to take the subway. And I realized something. That was good. Walking instead of driving my car. Working at a hardware store instead of pretending to be an entrepreneur. Living in a rented room instead of living for free in my house. All of that was good. Because it was real. It was humble. It was honest. And maybe, just maybe, that humility would save him. The months kept passing. Ethan kept up with his payments. They arrived on the first day of every month, without fail. Sometimes he brought them in person. Sometimes he deposited them. When he came over, we chatted for a while. He told me about his job, about the people at the senior living facility, about the small achievements of his day-to-day life. He was no longer the arrogant son who boasted about cars and trips. He was a hard-working man trying to rebuild his life from scratch. And I supported him. But from a distance. With clear boundaries, with love. But also with dignity. One day, 6 months after his first visit, he called me on the phone. Mom, can I come see you? I have something to tell you. Of course. When? This afternoon? That works. He arrived at 4 o'clock. He was carrying a small box in his hands. What is that? I asked. Open it. I opened it out of curiosity. Inside was the watch. The Longines I had given him for his birthday. The one he had thrown away like garbage. I got it back, he said softly. I asked one of my friends to look for it. It was at a pawn shop. I had to pay 3 times its value to get it back. But I did it. I took the watch out of the box. It was impeccable. They had cleaned it, polished it. It looked brand new. And I want you to know, Ethan continued, that I'm going to wear it every day. Not because it's expensive, not because it's a brand name, but because you gave it to me with love. And for a long time, I didn't know how to value that. But now I do. He rolled up his shirt sleeve and showed me his wrist. He was wearing a cheap digital watch. When I finish paying back everything I owe you, when I complete my 500 hours, when I feel I deserve to wear it, that day I'm going to put on your watch, and it will be a reminder of what I lost and what I recovered. I couldn't hold back the tears. Thank you, son. No, Mum. Thank you for not giving up on me, for loving me enough to let me fall, and for being here waiting for me when I finally stood up. We hugged. It wasn't a perfect hug. It wasn't like before. There was still distance. There was still pain. But it was real. And that was more valuable than anything. When he left that afternoon, I sat in the garden under the oak tree that Robert had planted. The sun was setting. The sky was painted orange and pink. The hydrangeas were blooming, bright and beautiful. And I was at peace. Because I had learned something important on this painful journey. Justice is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes months, years. But it comes. Karma is not revenge. It's balance. It's learning. It's giving everyone what their actions deserve. And true love is not blind sacrifice. It's love with boundaries. It's love with dignity. It's love that says, I love you, but I won't allow you to destroy me. Ethan had wanted everything without working for anything, and life had taken everything away from him until he learned the value of things. He had scorned my gift, and now he worked for months to get it back. He had said I was useless, and now he understood that I was his only real safety net. He had planned to leave me alone, and now he knew what it felt like to be alone. Life has a curious way of teaching, not with sermons, not with cruel punishments, but with natural consequences that force us to look in the mirror and decide who we want to be. And I hoped, with all my heart, that Ethan would choose to be someone better. But if he didn't, I was already fine, because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. You can't save anyone who doesn't want to save himself, but you can always save yourself. And that is enough. 2 years have passed since that night of Ethan's birthday. 2 years since he called me useless in front of 80 people. 2 years since I discovered that my own son planned to steal my house. 2 years since I made the hardest decision of my life, to defend myself. Today I turn 62 years old, and I am sitting in my garden under the oak tree that Robert planted so many years ago, watching the afternoon sun paint the sky in colours that have no name. The hydrangeas are more beautiful than ever. I have cared for them with patience and love, knowing that beautiful things require time and dedication, like healing, like forgiveness, like rebuilding a life. This morning I received Ethan's last payment, $33,000, installment number 24. With that last payment, he completed the $800,000 he owed me. He came to bring it in person, as always. But this time was different. He was accompanied. A young woman, about 30 years old, with a kind smile and intelligent eyes. Her name was Andrea. She was a primary school teacher. "Mum," Ethan said to me with a mixture of a nervousness and pride, "I want you to meet someone special." Andrea extended her hand to me with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Miller, Ethan has told me a lot about you. It's an honor to meet you." "The pleasure is mine." We went into the house. I made coffee and brought out the pound cake I had baked that morning, without knowing I would have visitors. We sat down in the living room, the three of us, and for the first time in years, the conversation flowed naturally. Andrea was intelligent, educated, and working class. She didn't wear designer clothes or carry expensive bags. She was wearing simple jeans, a nice but simple blouse, and comfortable shoes. You could tell she was real, that she wasn't with Ethan for his money or his status, because Ethan no longer had any of those things. She was with him for who he was now, not who he pretended to be. "How did you two meet?" I asked. Andrea looked at Ethan with tenderness. "At the St. Joseph facility, I brought my third-grade students to do a reading activity with the residents, and Ethan was there helping Mrs. Rodriguez walk through the garden. I almost fell with her," Ethan said, laughing. "Andrea had to come save both of us, and after that, we kept running into each other. I went on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He went on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But we started coordinating to be there on the same days, to better help the residents. Obviously," Ethan added with a mischievous smile. Andrea blushed. "Sure, only for that." I watched them smile at each other with complicity, and something in my chest felt warm. My son was in love, but not in the superficial way he had been in love with Valerie. This was different, more mature, more real. "Mom," Ethan said after a while, "I finished my community service last week. 500 full hours." "Really? Congratulations." "And today I'm bringing you the last payment. With this, the entire debt is settled." He placed an envelope with the money on the table, and he also placed something else, a small box, the same Longines watch box. "Do you remember what I told you 2 years ago?" I nodded. "That when I finished paying back everything I owed you, when I completed my 500 hours, when I felt I deserved it, that day I would put on your watch." He opened the box. The watch shone, beautiful and intact. "Today is that day." He took off the cheap digital watch he had been wearing for 2 years. He left it on the table carefully, as if it were a treasure. "This watch," he said, touching it with respect, "accompanied me through the worst and best moments of my life. It reminded me every day that I was paying for my mistakes, that I was working for something bigger than myself, that I was rebuilding my life from scratch." Then he picked up the Longines. "And this watch," he continued, his voice breaking slightly, "represents everything I lost and everything I recovered. It represents your love, your patience, your strength. It represents the man I want to be, the man I should have been all along." He put the watch on his wrist. It fit him perfectly. "Thank you, Mum, for this gift, for this lesson, for everything." My eyes filled with tears. "You're welcome, son. I'm proud of you." Andrea looked at us, her eyes shining. "Ethan told me everything," she said softly. "What he did, what you did. And I want you to know that I greatly admire your courage. Not all mothers have the courage to let their children fall so they can learn to fly." Her words touched my heart. "Fly?" I asked. "Yes, because now Ethan is free. Free from the lies, free from the debts, free from the person he pretended to be, and he is building a real, honest life with his own hands." She was right. My son was flying. It took 2 years, 2 years of hard work, of difficult nights, of facing his own darkness. But he had done it. After they left, I sat in the living room for a long time. I looked at the envelope with the last payment. $800,000 recovered. Not because I desperately needed it, but because it was important for Ethan to take responsibility. And he had done it, month after month, for 24 months, without failing once. I took the envelope and put it in my safe. I was going to use that money for something special. I didn't know what yet, but something told me I would know at the right time. That night, while preparing dinner just for myself, the phone rang. It was Patricia. "Sis, how are you? What did you do for your birthday?" "I got the best gift." "Which one?" "Ethan came, brought his girlfriend, and gave me the last payment. He has finished paying everything off." I heard a shout of joy on the other end of the line. "Thank God! And how does he look? How is he?" "Different. Completely different. He looks happy, humble, real." "I'm so glad to hear that. And you? How are you?" "Good. Better than good. At peace." "You deserve it, Clara. You deserve all the peace in the world." After hanging up, I went out to the garden with a cup of tea. The night was cool, starry, and perfect. I sat on my favourite bench and looked up at the sky. "Robert," I said softly, as I had done so many times in these 2 years, "you were right. I had to let him fall. It hurt, God. How it hurt. But it worked." The wind blew gently, moving the leaves of the oak tree, and I felt Robert answering me, not with words, but just with peace. The following months were quiet. Ethan came to visit me once a month, always with Andrea. Sometimes they invited me out to eat. Other times they came over and we cooked together. One Sunday in August, Ethan came with news. "Mum, I got promoted at the hardware store. Now I'm the supervisor of the construction department. It comes with a raise." "That's wonderful, son." "And Andrea and I are saving up. We want to rent an apartment together. Something small, but ours." "That sounds perfect." He was quiet for a moment, as if gathering the courage to say something. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Mum, do you think you could someday, I don't know, come to that apartment when we have it, see it, have dinner with us?" I smiled. "Of course, I'd love to." His face lit up. "Really? Really, and there's something else." "What?" He took a small box out of his pocket. He opened it. Inside was a simple ring. It wasn't gold or diamonds. It was silver with a small, modest stone. "I'm going to propose to Andrea, but first I wanted to ask for your blessing." My heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" "Completely. She's different from all the others. She makes me want to be better. She accepts me as I am. And she loves me not for what I have, but for who I am." "Then you have my blessing, and my complete happiness." We hugged, and I felt that we had finally closed a cycle. The cycle of pain, the cycle of betrayal, the cycle of loss. And we had opened a new one, the cycle of healing, the cycle of forgiveness, the cycle of rebuilding. In December, Ethan and Andrea got engaged. She said yes through happy tears, and they invited me to a small, intimate dinner to celebrate. It was just the two of them, me, Patricia, who flew in from Dallas, and Andrea's parents. It was a beautiful night, full of laughter, stories, and plans for the future. And for the first time in years, I felt part of a real family. Not a perfect family, not a family without scars, but an honest family. A family that had gone through the fire and come out stronger. When the night ended and everyone left, I stayed in my house feeling complete. I sat on my bed and took out the old photograph I had always kept in my dresser. The photograph of Ethan at 5 years old, hugging me in my mother's garden, smiling with that clean, innocent smile. I looked at it for a long time and realized that it no longer hurt. I no longer wondered where that child had gone, because now I understood. That child had grown up. He had made terrible mistakes. He had completely lost his way. But he had found the path back. And the man he had become was in many ways better than the child he was. Because he had learned, he had fallen, he had suffered, and he had chosen to get up. I put the photograph back in the dresser, and I took out something else I had kept for 2 years, the cheap digital watch Ethan had worn all that time. He had given it to me when he put on the Longines. "I want you to keep it," he had told me, "as a reminder, so that when you doubt if you did the right thing, you can look at it and know that you did, that it was worth it, that you saved me." I held it in my hands. It was a simple black plastic watch with green digital numbers. It cost maybe $20, but it was worth more than any Rolex, because it represented humility, it represented work, it represented transformation. I put it back in my dresser, next to the photograph. 2 symbols, 2 stages, the before and the after, the fall and the flight. That night, I slept deeply, and I dreamed of Robert. We were in the garden, under the oak tree. He was hugging me and saying, "You did well, my love. You took care of our son in the only way that truly mattered. You didn't protect him from the consequences. You prepared him to face them. That is true love." I woke up with tears in my eyes, but with a smile on my face, because I finally understood. Love is not giving everything without limits. Love is not sacrificing yourself until you disappear. Love is not allowing yourself to be destroyed. No. True love is having the courage to say no. True love is setting boundaries. True love is letting the one you love fall so they can learn to fly. And sometimes the greatest love you can give is loving yourself first. Because only when you love yourself, when you respect yourself, when you defend your own dignity, only then can you love others in a healthy way. Only then can you give without losing yourself. Only then can you be a mother without ceasing to be a woman. Today, as I write these lines in my diary, while the afternoon sun bathes my garden in golden light, I feel at peace. Not because everything is perfect, not because everything is resolved, but because I learned. I learned that I can be strong without being cold. I learned that I can forgive without forgetting. I learned that I can love without being a victim. And I learned the most important lesson of all. I am 62 years old, and my life is not over. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning. Because now I am free. Free from fear, free from guilt, free from living for others. And that freedom, that peace, that recovered dignity is worth more than any house. It's worth more than any money. It's worth more than anything material in this world. If my story helps even one woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. If my story helps one mother understand that she can love her children without destroying herself, it will have been worth it. If my story helps one person understand that it's never too late to defend yourself, to set boundaries, to say, "This is not okay," then all the pain will have had meaning. Because sometimes the deepest wounds teach us the most important lessons. And sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. My name is Clara Miller. I am 62 years old, and this is my story. The story of a woman who was betrayed by her own son, who faced the greatest pain a mother can feel, who made the hardest decision of her life, and who came out on the other side stronger, wiser, and more complete. If you are going through something similar, if someone you love is hurting you, if you are in a situation where you don't know whether to be strong or be a good mother, let me tell you something. Being strong is being a good mother. Defending yourself is being a good mother. Setting boundaries is being a good mother, because you cannot love others well if you do not love yourself first. And it is never, ever, ever too late to start. Thank you for listening to me until the end. Thank you for walking with me through this journey of pain and healing. And remember, every day is an opportunity to choose dignity over submission, to choose self-love over sacrifice, to choose truth over comfort. Choose wisely because your life is worth it. Your peace is worth it. You are worth it. Thank you for listening to me until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and turn on notifications to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, one woman, one life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. God bless you, and until next time.